Hello and welcome to a new episode of Ever Stage's Go to Master Show Season 3. We converse with RevOps and GTM leaders from some of the most successful companies today and learn from their unique stories. Joining us today is Salina Dayton, Head of Sales Ops at Moxa. First up, I would like our listeners to have a brief idea of who you are, what you do. Could you talk to us about yourself a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Salina Dayton, and I help lead sales operations for an industrial connectivity device company called Moxa. We are a Taiwanese-based company, and my role is specific to the Americas. Previous to that, I was with a Dutch-based semiconductor company. I've also worked for Starbucks Coffee Company as well as a bank and a software company. So I come to this experience with a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, I was actually going through your profile and all your LinkedIn posts, and what struck me was your entire journey from FP&A analytics, then two, three other analytics and
Mhm.
success partnerships, and a few other industries. While you were dealing with differences in role as well as the industries, excited to have your view on you know what you saw were the pivotal moments in your career that led you to where you are today, heading the sales operations.
Sure, absolutely. So I think that one of the most pivotal moments for me was while I was still in college. I was actually a dental hygiene major. And I had a leader who recognized that I was a really good problem solver and that business was a really good fit. And so she helped guide me towards business and then I had great professors along the way who helped guide me towards finance. Once I got into finance, I had great managers who helped guide me towards roles that had a lot of variety, and also helped guide me towards things that allowed me to use creativity and decision making. And so, as a leader myself, I really try to spend time recognizing what those strengths are within my team so that I can help guide them towards roles that really help them show up as their best selves and really get them engaged so that they enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, maybe just leading from there, what really works for you in the sales ops? So what keeps you motivated in the current role? Like probably that is what probably I'm looking at, like on an everyday basis, like analytics, and you have a strain of analytics and problem solving across the board. So what really motivates
Mhm.
you every day in the sales ops role?
So, one of the things that I like best about sales operations is the variety of work. When I hire someone on my team, one of the first things I tell them, and something I tell them very regularly, is that we are never going to get bored because there's always a new problem to solve, always a new challenge. Many times, things are more difficult than they seem on the surface. And when we try to start to unwind things in order to fix them, we find new problems to solve. So, for me, the challenge and the variety is what keeps me motivated.
Awesome. Like I said, I've been going through some of your posts, and you keep talking about how understanding diverse cultures in a team is key to effective leadership. Can you share an example of how you adapt your leadership style to different cultural mindsets, like the ones
Mhm.
who really work a lot and then discuss play later versus the ones that build relationship first and then work? Like how have you gone about working with different cultures in your leadership role?
You know, one of the things that's made this much easier for me is the use of AI. I think when I first started in my career, it was a lot more difficult to have to get my hands on some very clear information on how to best work with other cultures. And I think it's really important that we understand that when we study other cultures, we're talking a lot of times about averages. So even when we do look into other cultural differences, we need to understand that individuals within those cultures may not fit to that very specific description. But I think it's important that we just take a moment and do a little bit of research about, on average, what are the best ways to communicate with people from that culture, and also what are some of the important you know, ways that we want to interact with people within that culture. And then when we're talking to people, let's just be humble. Let's be human and let's be authentic. And when we see that something is working, then continue. And if we feel like there's friction, if we feel like things aren't working, let's be open, ask questions, be curious. And it's been my experience that people are very happy to share about their culture as long as someone's curious and really does want to learn.
Correct. Uh, Talking about empathy in some of the calls, I think that's key. Uh, you have built, a set of KPIs, and you have built your data infrastructure at, Moxa as well, to set up, basics of sales ops, as well as, going forward, all the work that you do. What are some of the challenges in getting teams to trust and adopt the data that you have built, and also the KPIs on top of it?
Sure. So I think that the most challenging is when you're joining an organization that doesn't have data driven decisions as part of the culture. One of the roles that I took was with a company that did not have a culture of making data driven decisions. And so a lot of the people that were impacted by my work felt very threatened because they felt like the data was actually taking away from their ability to make decisions. And it took time for us to be able to prove out that the data actually just helped them make better decisions. And so I think part of the journey is working with your users, working with your stakeholders to show them how the data actually gives them the ability to be more powerful in their decision making rather than taking away from the decisions that they're used to making. I think another key component is sometimes we try to do too much all at once, and it can be a lot more impactful if we do things in phases to make sure that we have something correct and that we've brought people along, that they believe in what we're producing, and then move to the next phase. Because sometimes when we try to do too much, what we've done, it's just too big of a change for people to absorb all at once.
I completely resonate with what you're saying. I have also handled a situation in past when bringing data to a process that didn't have database, the problem solving. The first reaction is also one of, "Hey, are you micromanaging me?" And that's super
Mhm.
difficult for you to tell them that, "No, I'm not micromanaging you at all. I'm not. I'm not. Giving you a report card. I'm actually, trying to set up something that will help you later." So, yeah, interesting point of view, and I completely resonate with that. Uh, so moving on to something related to data, which is, the flavor of the season, AI. You have described AI as a tool that is used to see around corners. Couldn't have put it better myself. To provide richer insights. Uh, what do you think is key uh, in terms of unlocking with AI for our sales ops roles specifically?
Mhm. So, right now, I think that the key is validation. I think that AI can really help us to get to answers much faster, but I don't think that AI has gotten to a place where we can completely rely on and trust what we're getting. So, one example is I'm working on a project and I needed to use some images in a PowerPoint. And I described for the AI exactly what I wanted to see for this business presentation. And the result that it gave back was actually, it looked like a child's drawing of a horse. So it was very far from what I had asked it for. And I know that I'm also getting some of these child's drawings of horses and data that I'm asking for, in some of the strategic questions that I'm asking. And so I think that we cannot, especially some of the people who are just coming into the workforce, we can't just take at face value everything that AI is telling us. We have to rely on our business knowledge. We have to rely on our intuition. And for those of us who have a lot of experience, we need to rely on our experience and not just copy paste from AI.
Correct. I think context is super important in my experience because that
Hmm.
quickly tells us if the answer is right or wrong in a second. But if you don't have context, then you're just left in the mercy of whatever is the answer that's thrown up. Uh, but maybe
Absolutely.
just to extend a little bit on that question, because you have very deep, interaction with the analytics side and even sales ops. Right? What do you think is going to be the transformation in sales ops, say 5 6 years down the line, or even 10 years down the line? Do you think it's going to get deeply integrated, and in what ways do you think it's going to get integrated?
Absolutely. So I know that when I first started in my career, one of the things that many of my colleagues and I would spend our time doing was data cleansing. I think AI will take over tasks like data cleansing. And so I think we'll get to a place where sales ops folks will be able to spend a lot more time talking with their stakeholders, understanding the context to a greater degree, producing analytics, being able to take disparate data and stitch it together very quickly. All of these things that myself and others who have the same level of experience that I have spent doing things that really aren't value added tasks, but are totally necessary to get to the point where you can do the value added tasks. I think AI will take over those pieces. I think it's also going to help get us to the place where maybe we start investigating and doing analytics on things that we didn't see those connections before. So I think AI is going to help us to be able to make connections for things that we haven't seen before. And I also think that AI is it's gonna take some of those repetitive tasks off of our plates. And so I think it's actually gonna make sales ops an even more enjoyable career than it is today.
Think if I wanted to paraphrase what you said, you're saying data hygiene or workflow
Mhm,
automation. And the
mhm,
other thing you're talking about is being a thought partner in terms of strategic, initiatives themselves, like where they
mhm,
come in and say, this is what other companies are probably doing with this data set, and you get onto new areas where you're
mhm.
interested. Couldn't resonate with that. Uh, and the final question for us today is, and this is going back to question one or two where you spoke about understanding different cultures and how you work with them to get things done. So, how do you strike a balance between being likable to actually being driven in the sense of getting things done? So, how do you strike a balance between the two approaches?
Sure. So, one thing I didn't mention about my background is that I do have an MBA from the University of North Carolina. And one of my professors at UNC wrote a book called Likable Badass. And I would recommend that book for anyone who's struggling with that balance. So, I think the most important thing is always to be authentic. And I think that there are ways where especially women struggle with that balance between being likable and being seen as being too driven. And I think that there are some subtle things that women and others who struggle with this can do that are discussed deeply in the book that I'm recommending. Um, but I think a lot of it really boils down to being authentic and building relationships. And so for me, one of the key things that I've done throughout my career is really try to build relationships with people, because when you have those relationships, people are willing to trust you and people are willing to follow you. And I don't think that it's very easy for people to trust or follow when they don't know someone and when they don't understand someone. So for me, that's the key.
Nice, nice. And would you be able to share one or two tips and tricks on how you actually build those relationships, especially if you're working remotely? I think you manage teams across the
Mhm.
globe as well, right? You started off saying it's a company out of Thailand. So how do you do that remotely through Zoom and all these visual media?
Building relationships remotely is really hard. And so I think it's key that leaders build in time to talk about things that have absolutely nothing to do with work. Leaders need to understand who their people are outside of work. And they need to build the time for the people on their teams to build connections that don't have anything to do with work. And I think it's really important to understand what's happening in people's lives, because we're not two dimensional. Even if we only see someone two dimensionally on screens, people are very complex. And so I think it's important that we take time at the beginning of building a team. And if you've already built your team, it's not too late to take time out and do things like building a team charter, like um taking tests to understand what the communication style is on your team. My company uses Insights. I've been at other companies that use Disc. There's lots of different tools that can be used to help you understand those differences on your team. Let people talk about who they are, let people talk about what's important to them, and then really check in and say, "Hey, one thing that you said was important to you was that we have more unstructured time. You know, how does the balance feel now?" Or one thing that you said was really important to you was to have more flexibility. How does the balance feel now? And I think it's super important as leaders that we circle back with people and we ask those questions, because so unstructured time to me looks very different than it does to other people on my team. And flexibility would look very different to me than others on my team. And so I think it's really important that we don't assume that we know how people are feeling or reacting or if we've gotten it right, but to really ask those questions. And again, that's going to go back to trust, because there are people that I've worked with in other cultures who have a very hard time telling you if they think that something isn't working. And so sometimes asking the question in very indirect ways, such as, if you were going to try to do this for the team, what would you do differently? And that gives you a very different response than, hey, do you think I'm doing okay with this topic that we talked about?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. This was probably one of the deepest answers of the entire podcast. The way you navigate this is super interesting because I know where I come from. These are very difficult questions to ask, and therefore people avoid answering as well directly. So you have to play around it.
Hmm.
And there are also, I think you included dealing with generational changes as well, like where you come from in terms of your time, and then the new age kids who have different access to information and knowledge, and then dealing with cultural diversity. It's super complicated, and it's made
Hmm.
even more tougher with the remote working or the hybrid work system that we have today. Uh, Awesome. Brilliant insight there. So maybe just to close out the conversation, I wanted to pick your brains on a few pieces of advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with.
Sure. So my biggest piece of advice is to look for opportunities. So when I started early in my career, I volunteered for a lot of opportunities. I specifically asked my managers for things that I could do outside of the scope of what I'd been assigned. And some of those opportunities that were outside of the scope of what I was assigned are the things that I think have been most impactful to my career. Joining employee organizations can give people leadership opportunities that they may not get in their role, and that can really further their career. And so I think just trying to take advantage of all of the opportunities is a lot more about asking than it is about someone walking up and tapping you on the shoulder, and handing you something. Another piece of advice that I have is to really pay attention. Pay attention to what are the things that you do at work that just make you lose time because you're really having fun. And what are those things that you really don't enjoy and it makes it hard to come to work? And have a conversation with your manager about how you can maximize the things that you really enjoy doing and minimize the things that you don't enjoy doing. And it's not necessarily going to be that they can take all of those things off your plate that you don't enjoy, but there might be someone else on the team who enjoys those things a lot. And there might be an opportunity to move things around on the team and then have multiple people enjoy their job more. And so I think the more that you're open with your manager about your interests, it'll help maybe not only you, but someone else on the team. And then the last thing that I would say is when you're looking at a lot of the data, um, people who are early in their career tend to get a little bit hung up on how things are formatted and what the actual numbers are. And the people that are going to move beyond those entry level roles are the ones who are going to be curious about what does this mean? What is the story that the data is telling me? Why is it saying this? And really asking questions and trying to understand the context.
You brilliant, Salina. Couldn't have worded it better. Especially the last point. That I see it even in people who interview for us. Like context is sometimes missing, and it doesn't really
Mhm.
create the same impression when you are interviewing that person. Like, hey, then probably I need to spend 2 hours of my time every day to tell that person what to do, versus that person just knowing what I'm talking about. So,
Right.
couldn't agree more. We are at the end of our conversation. It's been super awesome to talk to you, especially 2 or 3 questions where we got really good insights from you. It was obviously leading into directions that we generally don't go, where we went into some cross global conversations, which you could provide insights on versus someone else who's probably not that deeply integrated with the global teams. So it was absolutely awesome to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time, Selena.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of this insightful episode of Go to Masters. A big thank you to Salina for sharing her experiences and valuable insights. Remember, you can tune in to us every week to learn more from game changers driving hypergrowth companies across the globe. Go to Masters is brought to you by Everstage, your trusted partners for transforming the way business handles sales compensation. I'm your host signing off.